Hi folks, I'm here with that art lesson I told you about. We're going to work on how to make something look three-dimensional or 3D by using shading. So the idea of shading is the idea of putting dark and light spaces based on where the light would hit in your drawing. So we're going to look at it on paper, but then you should go off and do some work with this. And definitely don't expect this to come out perfectly amazing the first time. This is some challenging stuff. I'm still working on it and just barely starting to feel like I've got it. So for our beginning to start, we need to decide where on the page our light is supposed to be coming from. So let's say that our sun in our picture is over here. I like to draw myself a little doodle sun just to remind me that that's where the light is coming from in the picture. And I'm going to start by working with a circle and trying to turn it into a sphere. So what happens when a circle goes three-dimensional? All right, let's see how that's going to work. So here is our circle. Doesn't have to be perfect, mine's not. And I know that the sun in my drawing is coming from this way. So the darkest place is going to be over here. I'm going to start by shading nice and dark on that side. Notice that I'm not shading by drawing horizontal lines, nor am I shading by drawing vertical lines. That's one style that you can do, but that's not what I'm working with right now. What I'm working with right now is making my shading marks following the curve of our circle in order to help give the impression that it's an actual sphere. So let's keep going a little bit on that. I've got the dark section, and then I'm going to go dark but not quite as dark right here around the side. And then a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to do something that is going to make this look a lot nicer really quickly, which is I'm going to take a tissue. If you have Q-tips, those work great. If you have paper towel, that works. Toilet paper works. Honestly, your finger works, but it's going to get all smeary. So I'm going to use a tissue. And I'm going to rub from the dark area towards the light area in kind of like a little circle motion to help blend it together. It's going to kind of mix my colors together a bit. And the hardest part I find is to make sure that you don't blend too much that gets outside of your sphere. All right. That's starting to look fairly decent, but I'm feeling like over here needs to be a little darker. So I'm going to add some more pencil right there. The nice thing about this is that if you smear it and it ends up a little too light, that's no big deal. You just put a little more color down there and then do the smear thing again. We're going to blend this together nicely. Okay. I feel like that's pretty decent. I think I'm okay with that. If I accidentally smeared all the way up to here, I would just take my eraser and lighten up the part where the sunlight is hitting. Now we have our second step. We need to put a shadow on the ground. So think of your shadow as being like the puddle shape of what would happen if you took this shape and squished it. The shadow is going to be off on this side. So I'm going to go puddle, kind of like that. It's going to stretch mostly out this direction. The shadow is going to be darkest right underneath our shape and a little lighter towards the edge. But the whole thing needs to be shaded in because it's a shadow. So I'm going to begin by lightly shading my entire shadow. And then I think I'm going to blur the edges a little bit by kind of coloring over that first line that I made. Because a shadow isn't often super crisp. I'm going to make it a little bit darker right back here where no light would be able to touch. And yeah, I feel pretty good about that. I think it could use a little more blending. My shadow looks a little bit like there's too strong of a contrast between the dark and light place. I want it to look more like it blends together. There you go. Now, if you want to try this with a pen, you can, but you're not going to be able to do the blending work. So this really, for now, would be a good work to do with pencils. And then save the pen for another thing that maybe we'll do later, which is called cross-hatching, where you do the lines that crisscross each other to show your shades. Let's try another shape. I'm going to do a square, and then I'm going to turn it into a cube. So we know the sun's coming from this direction. First, I'm going to do my basic, like, how to draw a cube thing. Poof, it's a cube. All right, so let's see. The light is going to really hit the sides that we can't see. It's going to hit the top. This side's not going to get much light. This side's going to get basically no light. So I'm going to start over here and shade this all in pretty dark. Okay. Now I'm going to imagine that right here at the top edge, maybe a tiny bit of light kind of like glows around the edge. So I'm going to use my eraser to kind of lighten that up a little. And I'm going to blend it a bit because I don't feel like that was quite what I wanted. Now on this side, I'm going to say that a bit of glow will come in at the top since the light can hit here, and a bit on the side, and so over here is going to be the darkest. So I'm going to start there. I'm pressing down pretty hard at the beginning, and then I'm pressing down less and less as I move towards the area that I want to be lighter. I'm not going to leave any of it white though, because this side of the cube is definitely still in shadow based on where I drew my sun. If I drew my sun over here, it would not be still in shadow. All right, do a little bit of blending on that side too. I'm going to use my eraser to lighten up right here on the edges, kind of make them look like they're a bit glowy. I think I lightened them a bit too much. There we go. And if your main lines that show the shape got a little messed up, you can just draw over them again at the end to make sure they stand out. Now we need the shadow. So the shadow of this is going to have like a straight line that goes out this way, straight line that goes out this way, and it's going to kind of come to sort of a point. Something like that. And shade in the shadow. I strongly suggest that you start with simple basic shapes like this, things that you would find in our geometry materials, rather than trying to do it with like a cat or a tree, because that's going to be a more complicated work. It's a little bit easier if you can focus on a simple shape. And remember, right here at the base of my shape is where the shadow should be the darkest, because that's where the light isn't going to hit. And now I feel like that could definitely use some blending. If you happen to have someone in your household, yourself or somebody else, who has fancy drawing pencils, there are different pencils, some that are really hard lead, and so they will not put much down on the paper, and some that are really soft lead, and so they'll put a lot down on the paper quickly. If you have those, you might experiment with them. I'm not using anything special. I'm using just a totally normal pencil like we have in the classroom, and I'm feeling okay with how it's turning out, so there's no need for special materials on this one. All right, I'm feeling pretty good with that. I think I'm going to stop with those two shapes right now. So go ahead and go find some stuff and try and draw it. Start with basic shapes. If you want, you can set a cube or a ball or a simple shape that you can find in your house down and try and use like a lamp so you can put light shining right on it. That will give you the ability to do this on an actual shape instead of just from your imagination. I don't have a ball near me, but I do have this little guy. So if I sat him here, you can see, look, I can see right where his shadow is. That reminds me of another drawing lesson I want to do, so we'll do that one later. For now, go ahead and do some experimenting. Follow up on this and have a good day. Bye everyone. Happy drawing.